If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
and you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory podcast. On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we are talking about poly-friendly professionals like counselors and therapists and what you need to know when seeking out professional help for yourself or for your relationships.
It's funny because when I wrote that phrase, seeking out professional help, it's like, it's got such a negative stigma to it. Like the phrase itself,
Does
I feel
it?
like...
Professional help?
Yeah, I feel like, oh, you need professional help. Or like,
Yeah,
we need
well,
some
when you
professional
say
help.
that-
Like,
But no, but like, people still like have a hard time. I mean, sometimes when people have been like, hey, maybe you should see a therapist for that, I guess my gut visceral reaction is like,
no.
oh my god, I'm crazy.
Like,
But no, I
yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
have seeked out therapy in the past, and it's been really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And we're
yeah.
going to get into our personal stories a little bit
Yeah.
later with that about how it has been really helpful in our lives. And this is something we bring up because it's come up in some discussions lately, but also
Yeah.
in our 5 ways to suck less at communication, we do talk about the importance of having resources for your relationship that are outside of the relationship, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
friends or a discussion group or...
It's number 5 because it is kind of funny because, you know, we go through like, these are great tools for communicating, but one of these tools is communicate with someone who's not your partner.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very important.
And that can be very challenging because, you know, for poly people, they don't always have access to the same outlets that monogamous people do. Because, you know,
in
if
terms
you're
of like friends and coworkers.
yeah, because if you're
and-
monogamous and you're having issues, or you just want to be listened to, or you just want to tell a story to somebody about what's happening in your relationship, to bounce ideas off them or whatever, that maybe you can go to your friends, you can go to your parents, you can go to your siblings, maybe you can even go to your coworkers if you're close enough to them. But for someone who's in a non-traditional relationship, those
Yeah.
outlets aren't necessarily there.
Definitely.
Right, that they might just jump to immediately...
Saying, well, polyamory is clearly the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we've all come across that to some degree or another.
Yeah.
I found for myself, I've just had a lot of friends who I just don't talk to about relationship stuff
Oh, yeah.
anymore. I mean, not that I don't talk to them about my relationships, but I don't come to them when I'm like, hey, man, I'm really having trouble figuring this thing out.
Yeah.
I just don't come with that sort of thing anymore because... I don't feel like they get it. They'd just be like, oh, well, yeah, it sounds like you would have that problem. Or,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
tough.
I've
definitely.
gotten that kind of reaction a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did come across 2 people recently who are actually in monogamous relationships, but who said counseling kind of saved their relationship. These 2 people who were married, and they said that they were going to break up, but then counseling kind of saved their marriage, or saved them from breaking up, and then
That's
they later
great.
married. But then on the flip side, I have a different couple that I know who actually listens to our podcast, but still are monogamous, and they said that they routinely just go to couples counseling just as a preventative measure.
Yeah.
Not really to like fix anything, but just to
Well, that's
keep
excellent.
Exactly, just to
Yeah.
keep them sort of in check with one another and in tune kind of with the way in which they're choosing to
Yeah,
communicate.
totally.
Right. I mean, it's sort of the analogy would be, going to a doctor or someone who does homeopathic medicine
Yeah.
or acupuncturist or chiropractor or whatever it is regularly to like keep
There you
your
go.
health as good as it can be.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting until you have a bad problem.
Totally.
Exactly.
That's a really good
And then
point.
going to fix
the
it.
unfortunate thing, and I've experienced this personally because of, being a coach, that sometimes, actually most of the time, by the time a couple does seek out professional help, it's usually too late for the relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or it's going to be very, very difficult to turn things around, which is unfortunate because sometimes it gets people to that point of desperation where
Yeah.
things are so broken and things are so painful that is what forces them to finally get help. And sometimes it does work out for them, but a lot of
Yeah.
times it doesn't. Like a lot of times it is just like too far gone.
That's really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, though, even if you are, even if it is to that point where it's just like, man, this sucks, like, I need to get out of this relationship, it's unhealthy, whatever it is, that still going to therapy together can be really helpful for that.
Sure.
You know, to make that a smoother transition, make that a healthier transition, help you, you know, figure out what it is you needed to get from that.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's not to say that therapy or counseling or coaching or something couldn't still be really helpful in that case.
But not to necessarily use it as like a last-ditch effort in a
But
relationship.
ideally, it'd be something you could have earlier.
Yeah.
In terms of, also, you were saying that, you know a couple who said that going to counseling together saved their relationship.
Yeah.
I also find that, especially with polyamorous people, I have heard from a number of people that just finding a poly community, or even I have had people say that just finding our podcast helped save their relationship because it let them know they're not alone. It like gave them other people to bounce ideas off of and hear other people think about it. So it's not just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
All alone, right? That it's like, oh, other people go through these same things. They've survived it. They've found ways to make it happy and
For sure.
all that.
Yeah, so for those of you listening out there, you know, just to bear in mind, you know, even if your relationships are feeling pretty good right now, you may consider, you know, doing an occasional appointment with one of your partners or all your partners or each partner separately with some kind of poly-friendly professional just to kind of check up on things and see how things are going and see if there's anything that you need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's delve into some terms because honestly, like the difference between like a therapist or a coach or a psychiatrist, especially when I first started getting into this field, I had no idea what the difference was.
Yeah.
Right.
Other than like sometimes a difference in price.
Okay, so a psychiatrist. It's
Well,
a
yeah, okay, so
doctor.
we made a little list here.
Yeah.
So we'll go through this. So yeah, Emily, start us off.
So
here.
an MD is someone who has to go to medical school, for example, and they specialize in preventing, diagnosing, and treating mental illness.
So basically the key takeaway here is that a psychiatrist
Yes.
is the one who can give you drugs.
Yeah, that's always what I tell my clients is
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not the one who can give you drugs.
They can write a
Essentially.
prescription.
Right.
Yeah.
That they also have the most schooling, whether or not you think that is relevant to the kind of care you would get. But they're the ones who are medical doctors, right?
Yes.
So they can write prescriptions. They can, you know, monitor your health, can see how your physical health is reacting with your mental health, right? Like they are that no one else could write you that ADD prescription. Some states allow certain like nurse practitioners and things like that who are trained in counseling to do it. But for the most part, this is the person you go to if drugs are what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next one is a psychologist, and you know people often confuse the term psychologist and psychiatrist.
Right.
The difference being that a psychologist is someone they're not a doctor, they're not an MD, but they have a doctoral degree. So
Like
they
a
have
PhD
exactly, yeah, specifically in psychology. And so they can do psychotherapy, they can do cognitive behavioral therapy if they're trained in that. They can be counselors as well. They can diagnose mental disorders, things like that.
Right. And oftentimes they will work with a psychiatrist so that if they do decide, I do think this patient would benefit from some, medical, like drug treatment as well, could you diagnose them too and write a prescription?
Yeah.
But
So they can
they'll
work
be the
together.
one doing the therapy and the psychiatrist writes the prescriptions when they
Yeah.
work together.
Interesting.
So next we have a therapist.
And see, this I didn't know
Right,
until
so-
you looked it up.
So this is where it gets a little bit trickier as we go down the list. So a therapist is generally someone who has a master's degree in psychology or in a related field, such as like family counseling or social work or like something like that, can be a therapist. And they've passed, there is a national therapist exam that they can take to become certified, but the states vary too. Some states have their own tests and some don't have that. Like therapist is, the term is a protected title. So psychiatrist is a protected title, meaning you can't have this unless you have these requirements.
Yeah.
Therapist and counselor, which is our next one, vary by state.
Yeah.
So just so you're aware, in your state or in your country, this could be a little bit different. You will have to do a little of your own research. But basically that the therapist is someone who has a master's degree, level of education, and has some training in this and are generally certified by some certifying body. And then the next one, counselor, which is basically has a lot of overlap with that, is also someone who has a master's degree in psychology, counseling, or a related field, and are usually licensed in their state, although not always, like I was saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's hard in the United States, you guys. Like, it really varies
that
from
state
state to state
sovereignty.
on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the final one on the list.
A coach. And there's someone who helps clients achieve specific outcomes and better their lives, but they don't diagnose, they don't treat mental illness, they don't treat medical issues. And then the difference with this one is that there are private organizations that certify coaches. It's not a protected title, that it's regulated by government agencies.
Yeah, so
Right.
that was something
A
that I
little bit
learned.
separate,
yeah,
yeah.
when I was seeking out my coaching certification, that I learned in the state of California, for someone to call themselves a coach, they don't require anything at all.
Oh, wow.
And
Which,
most,
no, it's really
most states are
surprising.
that way.
Yeah.
Most states...
Stevie over
Stevie,
here
well,
can say
so
that he's
that's
a coach.
a little bit of a word of warning to people
Yeah.
out there. If you are seeking someone who is a coach, it doesn't mean that all coaches are bullshit, but it also means that not all coaches know their stuff.
Yeah,
so,
not all coaches
so look
are
into
awesome.
what their education has been, if they have any kind of certification. Even though I could have just like slapped the coaching label on myself and just started coaching, like I knew that
Right.
I wanted to get some training and some certification
Right.
first. So I went through a private organization to get certified.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the only way to become certified as a coach is through some private organizations that
Yeah.
offer classes or whatever. Generally, people who, like Dedeker, who are coaches, like are always kind of learning more things, going to
sure.
new workshops, stuff like that.
But on the coaching side, it is more about kind of focusing on client goals, focusing on them kind of getting to the next stage of whatever it is they want, rather than necessarily trying to diagnose any kind of mental illness or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Right. In
and-
fact, like that's very much not their job.
Not their
is
job.
to
Yeah.
diagnose.
No.
Like, if you're like, "What's wrong with me?"
like-
That's a question for like a therapist or a
That's
psychiatrist.
when I refer
or-
people to.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's
A
good.
lot of my clients
Right.
will do therapy in conjunction
Yeah.
with
That's
coaching
awesome.
as well. Yeah.
Well, and specifically, there's a lot of different types of coaches. There can be like a life goal coach,
There's
right?
career coaches.
Exactly.
there's-
But then Dedeker's specifically a relationship coach. Yeah.
Right. So again, it's an analogy I've heard is that a coach or a counselor also are more about focusing on where you are right now and helping you get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Versus a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist who their focus is more on looking at the past, how you've become what you are now, and how to try to fix some
Be
of
like
those things.
unpacking past trauma
Right.
or
Yeah,
things
yeah.
from your childhood.
So like that's less of something that a
PTSD.
coach or a
Yeah.
counselor would
Definitely.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of us have a little bit of personal experience with these on multiple levels, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I've had sessions with coaches, I've had sessions with therapists, both individually and with partners at the same time. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
Okay, tell us more about that.
I don't know. I mean, I think that like my experiences getting counseling together with a partner, I haven't done it very often. So it's been like all
Yeah.
50-50 for me. That, the one time it was actually really good with this particular partner, and then one time it turned out to not be so great with one partner.
Right.
I found that it really, really requires both people to be totally on board.
Oh, for sure. That makes sense.
Like, obviously, people have to be on board. People kind of already have to be in a mindset of, like, we're on the same team, and we want to fix this, and this is a step in fixing this.
Can I tell my therapist joke?
What's
You
your
may.
therapist joke?
How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb?
How
Well, what do you
many?
think?
Just one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
Oh, God.
I mean, it's true, though. It's true.
Didn't you say this at our discussion group? You said, like, you can't teach anyone something that they don't already know.
Yeah.
Sure.
There you
Yeah.
go.
True.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've seen that, but that's the thing is like the couple already has to be in this kind of like team mindset that we're trying to be on the same side here. And
That
just
we
get
both
someone
do
help
want to
us.
change, not
as,
just...
as opposed to I'm trying to get the therapist on my side,
Well,
or on the other
totally.
person's side,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which
Like
can
when-
be very easy.
You
to
can't
fall
go into
into
it with a combative mindset.
Yeah.
Like, if one person does that and just wants reassurance that,
Yeah,
like, they're
which-
being validated in their choices and in their actions.
Which the
Right.
sad thing is because people wait so long to go to therapy, often
Yeah.
it's already gotten to that point where
Yeah.
it's me
Right.
versus you rather than
Right.
us versus the problem.
And I just want to win rather than us
Yeah.
solve a problem
For
together.
sure, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you guys?
I mean, I went to therapy when I was in college, and it was not for a very long time. Like, you could do it, I think, through the college's health insurance for like 10 times or something. and it was with a master's student or a doctoral student or something at the college.
Got it.
And basically it amounted to me sitting there and just sobbing for the entire hour.
Well, sometimes people need that.
No, and I mean, it was very, like, therapeutic in a way. I don't know if I learned a lot or if I got a lot out of it specifically, because the gentleman who I did it with was lovely, but I believe, like, he really just kind of sat there and listened, which is a form of therapy.
Well, actually, if I could pivot off that really quick.
Please, yeah.
Because, a really effective therapy session that I had, the therapist, at the very outset, she told me, people kind of fall into these 3 different modes.
And I've heard that before.
Yeah, of working. Like, sometimes people go to a therapist and they just need someone to listen.
Yeah.
Like I just want to sit here and sob and cry or yell or shout or just vent everything, and I just need somebody to listen. And then through me talking through my problems, that's how I kind of come to my own solutions and my own catharsis and breakthrough.
Well,
okay, so that's one.
That's one.
Well, I want to hear the other two.
Okay.
Some people, it's a little bit more of a back and forth. Like, they want to have kind of more of a question-answer, like dialogue period. It'll be like, well, what do you think about that? Or maybe the client will even ask the therapist, well, no, well, what do you think about this? And back and forth. And then some people need more of a... like a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
And this is usually like for situations where like there's addiction, or if someone's in like a really bad abusive relationship where like they need someone to tell them very straight up, like, no, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Well, and is it their job to figure that out, or are they already like coming at all of their therapy sessions from one mindset?
I mean, I know that for myself as a coach, like I just try to be there and try to figure out basically as soon as possible what kind of style this person needs.
Yeah.
Right.
Because some people, if they're very savvy, you can straight up ask them, but not everybody's very aware.
That makes sense. And it was fascinating to me that, like, I would be really, I went to art school and I would be emotive there. But I would kind of just like put on this facade of being happy all the time, and then I would sit in that chair and just fucking cry and lose my shit immediately.
It was like as soon as you didn't have to have that guard up.
Yeah, and it
was
cathartic and really fascinating from that standpoint, that I didn't have to like think about it. It just occurred. It was really interesting.
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit different than that, a lot different than that.
Yeah.
So for me, also my first time going was also in college, and I was in a pretty very stressful relationship. I had a lot of stress with that, and this. I had health insurance through my dad, and it covered, again, like up to a certain amount of mental health stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I went to was a psychologist, because I knew that at this time I specifically didn't want a drug solution to anything, but was just, wanted someone to like help me figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
And so I was a little more in that category of like, I wanted the back and forth kind of thing. And the guy that I went to, his deal was that he was specifically a behavioralist. Meaning, the way he described it is like, I'm about looking at what's happening and trying to see how you can, change the way you're thinking about things and change results through like directly affecting what's going on right now.
Yeah.
As opposed to psychoanalysis, which is more about like analyzing the past and trying to figure out that sort of stuff. He's like, this is more focused in right now.
Yeah.
And for me, I only did a few sessions as well. And it has, to this day, hugely affected the way that I look at relationships and has given me so much more. What I got out of it was it gave me a lot more agency in understanding that if I was in a really unhappy and really negative relationship, that it wasn't my job to stay in it to fix the other person, which was something that kept me in a lot of relationships longer than I should have. And that still happened since then, but being able to think back to those things has helped me to stay more aware of that. It was a huge realization for me at the time, and kind of the understanding that other people to a certain extent are out of your control, and that just because they're having a hard time or whatever doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to fix it. And also, like, you might not be the right person to fix it. Yeah. It's not even just like, oh, whatever, it's not my job. But, like, you might actually probably are not the person who is best equipped to help them.
No.
Maybe you're in such a position that you could never be the one to help them in terms of like you're just not the right person for that, whether it's because of your relationship to them, because of your personality, something like that it's all going to backfire when you try it, and that's okay.
Yeah,
that's not a failure of you.
No, and I think all three of us have tended to be people who want to like help and fix and
right.
you know, it really
sure.
like make better the partners who we're with, and often it's just not possible.
Yeah,
and that's also not our jobs. Yeah.
And then I was going to say, though, that I did go to, this time, a counselor years later when I was living in Seattle. And with her, it was much more about, like, I came in for my first appointment, and she's like, what is it that you, like, want in your life? What is it you want to get out of this? I was like, I want to be a rock star.
Yeah, I remember when you said that.
And she just, like, lost her shit. She's like, that's the best answer I've ever gotten to that question.
Yes.
Well, you're kind of a rock star now.
You are.
Yeah, and like, and it's funny is thinking
like
back
a niche
to that.
rock star.
Thinking back to that, I moved a little bit from, at the time, I literally wanted to be a musician, you know, be a rock star type of person, and have moved to like, still, there's elements of that. Like, we felt like rock stars on tour.
Yeah.
But that more of like a metaphorical rock star than an actual literal rock star, which is funny. But in that, it was not really about my relationships at all. It was just about me. It was about figuring out some of that self-talk that I had about like the judgment that I felt people were giving me when I was doing a show and being like, oh, people are like hating it, they think I suck. And she's like, well, did anyone tell you that they hate you or they think you suck? And like those sorts of questions.
We all need that kind of shit once
Sorry,
in a while.
I'm giving Jase a very pointed look right now because he still does that.
I still struggle with that.
I still do that.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. I'm like, oh my god, it's a matinee, and they weren't fucking laughing at me during my production of Company. And then I'm like, well, they're all old. They're not going to be laughing right now. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. But
goodness.
matinee audiences are challenging.
Yeah, matinees are always challenging.
Yeah. It's all right.
It's challenging to be a matinee audience, too.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Because it's like 2 p.m. on a Sunday.
I know,
like,
and you're like,
well.
do I need to laugh right now? Am I going to do that?
So I do want to direct people. There are 2 main resources that I found to be very useful, specifically for polyamory-friendly professionals. There's 2 directories online. One of them's called the KAP directory. That stands for the Kink Aware Professionals directory. I would give you the URL, but it's like super long and convoluted. So just Google it. Just type in KAP directory or CAP directory or Kink Aware Professionals directory and you'll find it. I'm listed in that directory myself. And so it's a huge directory of people who are not only kink aware, but also BDSM aware, poly friendly, just generally non-monogamy friendly. And it's not even just therapists. It's like lawyers, doctors.
Right.
I think even
That's
like people
awesome.
who will paint your house. Like I think it's like any kind of professional who is like kink friendly or poly friendly.
There was actually just a discussion the other day in the patron only group about poly aware real estate agents. When you're like looking for a house for maybe multiple partners
There
to
you
live
go.
in or something like that.
Multiple rooms, multiple
Nice.
partners.
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
Exactly.
and then the other one, Tristan Taormino, who wrote Opening Up, she created something called the Open List. And you can find that at openingup.net/open-list. And we will put that URL in our show notes so you can find it. And it's a similar thing. It's a big old directory full of specifically poly and non-monogamy friendly therapists. My most recent therapist that I found him through that.
Through the Open List.
Yeah,
Okay.
through the Open
Got it.
List. So I definitely recommend that.
Yeah. But so even when you're doing these lists, or if you're not, like, you know, maybe there's not a lot of people in your town or something like that, you can look around and don't be afraid to actually just ask them point blank, you know, what is your level of experience with non-monogamy?
Yeah.
Or polyamory specifically, or whether you also want to be able to talk to them about kink stuff, or you know, whatever it is, like, they're the ones working for you, not the other way around. Like, feel free to just ask them those questions. Be like, hey, I want to be clear. Polyamory is not the problem. I want to be able to talk about these other things.
Absolutely.
And bear in mind that, you know, even if you can't find a professional in your specific area or town, there's a lot of people who are willing to do Skype sessions or phone sessions.
Yes,
so you
absolutely.
can find somebody who's maybe in a bigger city or who's more friendly to alternative lifestyles that you can reach out to. Now, specifically, a counselor that I found a while ago, I really, really appreciated. So I guess I would encourage people to still do their due diligence, even if you find somebody who's listed in one of these databases.
Right.
Still reach out and ask them, like what their comfort level is working with polyamorous people. Check out their website, see what it is that they say about it. What I really loved, a counselor that I ended up going with, on her site, she specifically listed, like, I'm comfortable working with people who are in hierarchical polyamorous relationships or non-hierarchical polyamorous relationships. Cool. And that was what I was like,
to
wow.
To show the, like, awareness
like,
of
you
that.
are so aware, and, like, I feel so comfortable
that's really
being able
lovely.
to come to you, and that I don't have to explain how, like, no, like, I don't have a single primary, and, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So it is really important to ask those kind of questions of people that you're vetting.
For sure.
Absolutely. And then also in that same vein is to don't be afraid to ask questions and to be clear what kind of support it is that you want. They're the professional, so to a certain extent you might want them to give their thoughts and their opinions, but also if you're in your sessions and realizing that their communication style isn't working for you, like you were talking about someone who they might think you just are someone who wants to just talk and be heard, but really you're someone who, like, no, I want advice. I want someone to give me that tough love. By telling that to them explicitly, maybe you've even gone a couple times and you say, you know what, I feel like I'm not being challenged enough.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday. It's great.
Right.
Yeah.
And that you can actually come to them and say, hey, I would like to be challenged more. Or on the other hand, like, hey, you know what, I kind of just want you to, like, support me and listen a little bit more. That, hopefully they are a good enough professional at this that they can be like, okay, great, I can give you that thing you want.
Yeah.
Like Dedeker was saying in her sessions, she tries to kind of figure out from them, since most people don't have sort of the knowledge to know which one they want. She tries to figure it out the best she can. But if someone were to come to her a few sessions in and be like, hey, you know what, I would really like more of this.
Yeah.
Or even, you know what, normally we do this, but just today, I just want to be able to talk.
Sure.
That whatever it is that, she'd be like, okay, of course. Yeah, thank you for actually advocating for your needs and letting me know.
Because it's a relationship as well. So you're going to do the same kind of stuff.
Exactly.
That you would in a regular relationship.
Yes.
Okay, so what are the preventative measures? Because we've got some possible alternatives. We understand that counseling together may not always be the solution.
Yeah, that was something
Yeah.
that I learned recently from my therapist that really surprised me. Is he told me that actually in certain very unhealthy or abusive situations, it's not recommended for couples to get counseling together.
Yeah, when you said that was really
Yeah,
interesting.
I know, because
to me.
he said that sometimes it can teach the person who's abusing, sometimes it's both people, you know, how to do it better, essentially, like how to do it softer, kinder, more gently, more manipulatively, instead of very, on the nose or beating somebody over the head with it. That they actually, for that situation, they recommend people getting counseling separately.
Absolutely. I know that there are some, counselors and coaches and things who have different policies on that. Some being like, we'll do stuff together, but only if we're also doing stuff separately. Some who say, I will counsel both of you, but not at the same time. Like for them, it's just like, nope, I've found that it's always more important to do it separately. So there is kind of a whole range there. And that, but I did also want to cover, though, that not everyone can afford counseling or therapy or whatever. It's a privilege, right? It can be a little bit expensive.
It can be expensive, yeah.
And so we wanted to discuss some some alternatives and also just some other options you might have that you're not even aware of.
Well, I feel like what I've seen recently, I feel like I've seen many more counselors and coaches and therapists offering sliding scale pricing, as in they will offer a wider range of, if you're in financial need, that maybe they have a reduced sliding scale. Sometimes they will put that information out there. Sometimes they won't. It doesn't hurt to ask. Just reach out and ask, like, do you have any kind of incentives or do you offer anything for people in financial need? Because sometimes it can actually be quite affordable.
That's great.
With those sliding scale fees.
Yeah, with the counselor that I went to in Seattle, the Rockstar one.
Yeah, right?
No. I went to her, and at the time I was making like nothing.
Yeah.
Was super broke, and at the time she had a deal that was like, it was $50 a session if you bought 3 sessions at once. Like she had a little deal that she worked out. And then after I'd been going to her for a few months, she's like, hey, so I actually can't do that deal anymore because I found out it's illegal to sell counseling sessions in advance.
Wow.
Like somehow in Washington that was not legal.
Interesting.
And so she's like, but I'll keep giving you that price. So there's also like kind of once you're in with someone, once you have a bit of a relationship, they can also oftentimes I've found will work with you.
That's
too.
great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So for people who don't necessarily want to go to counseling right now, or maybe they really can't afford it, or maybe their partner really doesn't want to, things like that, there of course are plenty of things that you can do to make sure that your relationship stays healthy and that you're still doing maintenance on it.
Right. What are some of our favorites?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but Scrum, one that is incredibly important to me and that I know to the two of you, that you can check out our Agile Scrum
episode,
which I think was 97 or 8.
I think it's 97.
Wait, 97, 98, yes. Something around there.
Basically what that is, though, is a monthly check-in that you do with your partner, and you can do this in multiple relationships.
Yeah, creating a safe space.
But it's having a specific structure.
Exactly.
Rather than just like, we're going to talk once a month. Sure. It's like, we're going to go through this specific step-by-step thing about figuring out what we want our relationship to be like. What else?
Like we talked about earlier in the episode, connecting to community can be a huge thing, and most of the time free. Also, if you can find a local poly meetup, either offline, where you're located, or online also.
Right.
That's why we really encourage people to join our Patreon community, not because it supports us, but because people do find they can actually connect to a community. And we do have a lot of people who don't have a local poly community, but they're able to
a small
find
town,
that.
it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, they've just moved somewhere where there's not as much of a community.
Exactly.
Yep.
You can do things like communication workshops or any other kind of personal development work, like meditation, or take an NVC workshop, or things
do
like that.
Yoga. Go work out. Let off some steam.
Yeah, well, like Dedeker does a lot of meditation retreats that are like long. So you just went on a 10-day retreat recently.
Yeah.
Something that I think a lot of people might not realize because they're used to the more commercialized retreats. But how much did that 10-day retreat cost you?
Technically, it could have cost me nothing.
Right.
Yeah, wow. So I did this 10-day meditation retreat, and it was facilitated by some Buddhist nuns specifically, and they're not supposed to charge for giving retreats or giving teachings. The whole idea is that in exchange for the community taking care of them, feeding them, they give the teachings. And so for their retreat, they only required a deposit of $150.
Jeez.
Right.
Some of them, the deposit is $75, which you can get back at the end of the retreat if you want, or you can donate it to them.
Right.
But that's $150 for 10 days
for
of
10 days of room and course.
That's amazing.
And an awesome safe space where I don't have to worry about anything, essentially.
Yeah. Right.
So actually, if you do a little bit of research, especially if you do look into specifically Buddhist run retreats, you can find some that are very accessible and affordable.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So if you just need some kind of an excuse to get away, not be on your cell phone, and not, whatever
Sounds
it is.
Great.
Right?
Cheers. Yeah, and also just continuing to practice safe communication habits within your relationship. Kindness, halt. Things like that just so that it doesn't continue to fester bad habits within your relationship.
I think the through line, especially for people who do choose to get counseling as a preventative measure rather than when there's a problem, is that it's bringing that intentional focus and intentional thought and intentional mindfulness to your relationship. We're not just doing this on autopilot. It doesn't matter if we've been together 6 months or 10 years, that we're still crafting our relationship and we're still investing.
We're still working on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And also, just to cover this, because we didn't quite get into it, but you might be surprised at how many local polyamory meetups there are in your area. You might think, you know what, we don't have a community, but try checking on places like meetup.com.
Yeah.
Or even on Facebook, you might be able to find something. Or start your own.
Yeah.
We had some guests on a couple years ago from Arizona from
my hometown.
Yeah, from Tucson, Arizona, who they went there and they're like, there's a little bit of a poly community, but they didn't really identify with it. It didn't quite fit with them, so they made their own. And within a year, they had 100 people showing up to meetups and stuff.
Super cool.
So it is. There are ways to do it, even if you think there might not be. And then also, don't be afraid to try a few different ones. Yeah. Maybe you have to drive a couple hours to get to one near you. But if it's only once a month, it might be worth it to have people to talk to, right? Yeah. Have people who get it, who understand it, or also to see people who are good role models.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? It could even, especially if you're new to it, I think that, just being able to see, wow, look, there's people that are happy doing this, especially if you're in that transition phase, going from monogamy to polyamory, which can be really rough.
Yeah.
It can be difficult.
Yeah.
But to see like, hey, there's people that have made this work.
Yeah.
There's people that are
okay.
happy. Even just that can be really affirming and might be exactly what you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Sweet.
Well, where can the people find us if they want more of this good stuff?
If you want more of this good stuff,
Good.
you can check out our website at multiamory.com, or you can find us, of course, on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you happen to come across us just now. Also, we're on Facebook, Multiamory, patreon.com/multiamory if you want to be involved in the community and get in the private Facebook group as well.
We're on Twitter and
We're on
Instagram.
Twitter, Instagram. You can find us sometimes on Reddit. We're all over the place. Just Google Multiamory and you'll probably
run into us.
Some places.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. And if you want to send us emails to info@multiamory.com, we do read all of the emails, and we love hearing from you, whether it's just some encouragement, positive feedback, whether it's some criticism. Get that sometimes, or if it's a question about, hey, this is something that's going on, maybe that will inspire us to do an episode on that topic, or we might just write back to you with some resources or things to look at.
All right.
So thank you all so much.
See you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.